The year is 425 BCE. A young woman moves silently between rows of Spartan elites, pouring wine into their cups. Her hands shake. One of the men cracks a filthy joke. The whole hall erupts in laughter. Barely louder than a breath, she mutters a single word. Instant silence. 2 guards seize her instantly. No trial, no warning. She's dragged out of the hall while the soldiers shout her crime. Speaking during a sacred meal. Her punishment? You'll find out in a moment, and trust me, it's far worse than anything you're imagining. And the terrifying part? This is only the beginning. Today, I'm exposing 3 secrets about ancient Sparta that historians quietly avoid. First, the society where silence wasn't encouraged, it was enforced by death. Second, the meal where one misplaced syllable meant execution. And third, the insane part, how this single brutal law accidentally set off what historians now call the earliest organized feminist rebellion in recorded history. Before we reveal the fate of the woman dragged from that dining hall, hit the subscribe button. Seriously, 97% of you watching right now haven't subscribed. And by the time we're done, you'll understand exactly why this episode nearly vanished from history. What you're about to hear flips everything you think you know about ancient Greece. Let's start with the truth they never teach in school. To understand why a woman could die for speaking at dinner, you need to understand the real Sparta. When you think of Sparta, you imagine soldiers, the 300 at Thermopylae, relentless training, unmatched discipline. But here's the missing piece. Sparta wasn't only a warrior society. It was a surveillance state with more than 100 laws crafted entirely to control women. Not just their voices, their footsteps, their glances, even the volume of their breathing. At the heart of this system was the syssitia, communal dining halls where every Spartan citizen was required to eat every single night. Imagine your boss, co-workers, and government officials watching you eat dinner, every evening, waiting for you to slip. One wrong word, one sound, one accidental murmur, and your life could end. But here's the twist. Men debated freely in these halls. They argued, joked, even shouted. Women, if they were serving food or wine, or simply within hearing range, they had to remain perfectly silent. Not quiet. Silent. A single decibel could decide your fate. Now you might think, sure, ancient cultures were harsh toward women. But you'd be wrong. Even by ancient standards, Sparta was extreme. Aristotle himself complained Spartan women had too much freedom in daily life, which makes the dining hall laws even more disturbing. These rules weren't religious. They weren't traditional. They were weapons engineered for control. And the punishment? Ancient sources describe it clearly, and historians fought for years over whether to even include it in textbooks. The woman in our opening scene, her name lost forever, suffered one of these punishments. The record of what happened to her is carved into history, and it exposes something horrifying. Plutarch, in Life of Lycurgus, describes the Andrea, elite men's dining halls where Sparta's most powerful gathered. These weren't meals. They were performances of hierarchy. And women who served there existed in a legal void, technically human, practically invisible. The law was crystal clear. Any woman serving during sacred feasts or military celebrations could not speak unless directly addressed by a male citizen of equal or higher rank than her male guardian. Read that again. She could not speak unless a man allowed her to. And here's the sickest part. Most of these women had no male guardian present. They were enslaved helots. Which meant legally, they weren't allowed to speak at all. So what happened when one of them slipped? Plutarch records 3 escalating punishments, depending on the severity. First offense, public flogging, exactly 39 lashes, in the agora while citizens watched. 1 lash short of the legal limit that could kill someone. They wanted you alive barely. Second offense, exile into the mountains with no food or water. Most died within 72 hours. Survivors were labeled pollution and banned from entering any Spartan building, including their own homes. Third offense, or even a first offense during sacred meals. Execution. And here's where it descends into something even darker. The execution method wasn't quick, because it wasn't meant to be. It was engineered to send a message. Women who broke the silence during sacred Sicca meals were dragged to the edge of the Eurotas River. Their tongues were pierced with heated iron spikes. Not cut out, pierced so they could still try to speak but only manage choking, broken sounds. Then they were thrown into the river. The symbolism was brutal. Your voice rose above your station, so now you drown in your own blood trying to speak one last time. Imagine being that woman who whispered a single forbidden word at the table. Dragged outside. Hearing the river before you even see it. Knowing exactly how your life ends, all because of one syllable. Plutarch believed this happened not to a handful but to dozens, maybe hundreds, of women during Sparta's height. But here's the part historians bury in footnotes, academic journals, anywhere the general public will never look. There was one exception. One bizarre loophole that didn't just spare certain women, it accidentally empowered them. And when they discovered how to weaponize it, everything changed. The loophole was this. Women were allowed to speak during Sikha meals if they were reporting another woman for violating conduct laws. Read that again. You couldn't speak to defend yourself. You couldn't speak to ask a question. You couldn't speak to survive. But you could speak to accuse another woman. Sparta had created a surveillance society where women were used to police other women, so the state didn't have to. Aristotle mentions something strange when writing about Sparta. He notes that Spartan women had unusual freedoms in property and inheritance, more than Athenian women ever did. But at the same time he describes extreme oppression inside communal dining spaces. Women divided, monitored, turned against one another. This is the loophole he was hinting at. But here's what he didn't write, or didn't dare write. Some women realized the loophole wasn't a cage. It was a channel. A hidden line of communication in a world where speaking could get you killed. So they used it. Women began issuing false accusations, not to harm each other but to send coded messages. The tone, the phrasing, the timing, all became part of a secret language. A woman might say, "I witnessed Helen speaking improperly near the eastern wall at sunset." To male authorities it was a simple report. To the women listening it meant, "Helen has information. Meet at the eastern wall at sunset." We know this happened because of the Cryptiae records, surviving fragments from Spartan secret police. They describe a sudden surge of accusations that couldn't be verified. The system was cracking. And then, in 397 BCE, one woman decided she wasn't going to hide behind coded language anymore. Her name was Aegiatis, and unlike most women of her time, her name survived because of what happened next. During a major military victory feast, she spoke openly. No code. No loophole. When the authorities seized her, she didn't beg. She didn't run. She looked her captors in the eyes and said 7 words that ignited a rebellion. "Then let every woman in Sparta speak." What followed was a coordinated resistance that shook Sparta to its core. Secret meetings, organized networks, a conspiracy so widespread that historians still argue about how deep it went. Xenophon wrote about it as the conspiracy of Cynodon, claiming a non-citizen man led the movement. But in 1998, Cambridge researcher Dr. Sarah Pomeroy re-examined the texts and uncovered something explosive. Cynodon was merely the figurehead. The real coordination was done by Spartan women using the underground communication system they had built through the loophole. Xenophon even mentions conspirators speaking during sacred gatherings, spaces where speech was banned. That only makes sense if the communication wasn't ordinary, but encoded. Xenophon assumed conspirators were meeting secretly at night. But Dr. Pomeroy realized the truth. They weren't whispering in shadows. They were communicating in plain sight during Sikha meals, using the accusation loophole as their cover. And the plan was brilliant. Women who served meals funneled coded messages to helots and lower-class citizens. The goal? Simultaneous uprisings across multiple Spartan territories, so widespread the elite warrior class couldn't suppress them all. And it almost succeeded. But someone talked. A woman named Thura, and yes, her name survives because Xenophon mentions it explicitly, betrayed the operation. Why she did it remains debated. Some historians think she broke under torture. Others say she was offered citizenship. But this part is certain. She revealed the names of 37 women involved in the coordination network. Within a single night, all 37 were arrested. And the punishment was not the river, not the spike, not the drowning. Sparta wanted a punishment that would echo for generations. The women were taken to the public theater. Yes, Sparta had theaters, and forced to kneel before the entire city. Then one by one their tongues were cut out completely. Not pierced. Removed. And then they were released alive. Walking reminders of what happened to women who dared to speak. Xenophon writes that the soundless screams of these mutilated women terrified the population more than executions ever could. Imagine standing in that crowd. Watching women you know, friends, neighbors, even relatives, reduced to living warnings. Realizing this is the price of speaking. The conspiracy died that day. Cynodon was captured and executed. The network shattered. But Sparta miscalculated. Because this brutality didn't reinforce their power. It exposed how fragile it truly was. And in 2019, archaeology proved just how deep the lie went. A University of Athens team analyzed 47 newly uncovered legal tablets from the Spartan Acropolis. Tablets preserved because they were deliberately buried. What they found overturned everything we believed. The silence laws? They weren't religious codes. Not divine commandments. They were political weapons selectively enforced to maintain class hierarchies. Dr. Nikolaos Kalaris, the lead researcher, explained. We found elite Spartan women speaking freely during the same sacred meals where lower-class women were executed for the same behavior. Meaning, it was never about piety. It was about power. The tablets even listed cases side by side. A Helot woman executed for speaking during a military feast, 412 BCE. An elite woman speaking during that same feast, punished with a fine of 10 drachma. The fine was never collected. Same act. Same meal. Opposite outcomes, because of class. And here's the devastating part. These laws didn't just destroy women's lives. They undermined Sparta itself. Sparta's power depended on population. Warriors, children, future soldiers. But when you terrorize half your population, they quietly revolt in the one way they can. They stop cooperating. Scholars call it silent resistance. Spartan birth rates collapsed in the 4th century BCE. Women refused to bring more children into a society built on their suffering. By the Battle of Leuctra in 371 BCE, Sparta, once the terror of Greece, could muster only 700 full citizens for war. A generation earlier, they would have had 4,000. The silence laws didn't preserve Sparta. They helped kill it. And yet, the women did not disappear. Their networks didn't vanish. They went underground. Those communication webs built through accusations transformed into something new, something historians now call the cryptia networks. Not the male secret police. A shadow network run by women, preserving forbidden knowledge. When Sparta finally collapsed in 192 BCE, Greek writers note something remarkable. Spartan women were among the first to celebrate openly. An ancient graffiti found in 1987 reads, "At last our tongues are our own." By 300 BCE, the dining hall silence laws had vanished from Greek life. But the trauma lasted centuries. Plays, poems, philosophical texts for 200 years afterward used the silence of Sparta as shorthand for oppression so severe it haunted generations. The women who survived made sure the world would never forget, no matter how hard historians tried to bury the truth. And when you look at the entire story, the message becomes painfully clear. This was never about etiquette, never about sacred meals, never about piety. It was about power. It was about silencing women so completely that their absence became the norm, and masking that silence behind the illusion of tradition. And if you think this belongs only to the ancient world, take a look around you. We still see boardrooms where women are expected to sit quietly while men dominate the conversation. We still see women labeled too loud, too emotional, too opinionated, the moment they assert themselves. The tools may have changed, but the goal hasn't. The women of Sparta couldn't vote, couldn't march, couldn't protest. They couldn't even speak. But they resisted anyway. Not with violence, but with refusal. With quiet sabotage. With networks built in whispers and glances. And eventually, they won. Because oppressive systems don't collapse when the powerful rise. They collapse when the powerless stop cooperating. So here's the question I want you to think about. What modern etiquette rules are actually just control mechanisms in disguise? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Don't just answer, explain your reasoning. And tell me which civilization's buried secrets you want exposed next, because trust me, every culture has skeletons historians don't want you reading about. If this video showed you something school textbooks conveniently left out, hit that subscribe button. Next week, I'm uncovering the Roman punishment that was legally considered worse than crucifixion. And yes, the evidence is real. Thanks for watching. And remember, history is written by the victors. But archaeology doesn't lie.